Hello, welcome to the Research Cat. You're not going to see too many of these where the camera is just pointed at the cat and I, but I wanted to introduce because someone asked why I named this channel the Research Cat, and I had thought that with my buddy here, who assists me in my research, that since I spend enough on him, it would be great if his fuzzy face here earned me millions of views. I understand people like to click on cat videos. He helps me out by sitting on my books, knocking over my lamps, stealing my, on occasion, my mouse or my pens. He doesn't want me to work too hard, and I can appreciate that. So, but I wanted a chance to connect to my viewers personally. This, of course, behind me is my office. I apologize, I don't have a great background or some sort of cool screens or something. It's just kind of a point and shoot at a place where my cat is going to be for it. I was dictated somewhat to the wish of the cat. This is the third time we shot the video, much to his annoyance. And so we have to make this one count or the scars that I will have will be too much. He's not a big fan of being on camera here. But I have, and you can see in the stacks behind me, my shelf of video games, my work that I'm trying to get done, my Star Trek books and comic books, and I have way too much fun playing with the camera, so it can go all the way over, and I even have a headphone holder, because I think everybody has to have somewhere where they're going to put their gaming headphones. But this channel specifically, I think my research cat has said, he's about done with this. But he kind of inspired the title for it, but what I really wanted to do is I wanted to have a channel that addresses research in a fairly narrow confine. That when we look at research, many times the research that's being shown on the internet is tips of do these things, specific actionable ideas, and they'll be able to help you. And that is true. But it's not the whole story, because there's a lot of underlying ideas and a framework that has to be done. I see that currently we can only see the tail of the cat. Well, there's a cat down there. He's sitting next to me. I got a chair big enough specifically so the cat can sit right next to me. This cat is a little spoiled. And he's currently clawing my leg. Oh well. The thing is with this research channel is that, well, I will address some things like studying. It's not going to be really based on tips of study this many hours or anything like that. I'm really looking at what is the difference between homework and studying, because there is a difference. They're not interchangeable words, although they're frequently treated that way. And that can become a little bit of a problem because it misleads people on the difference between theory and application. There's a difference in, if you look at doctorates, there's PhDs and there's MDs or EDDs or whatever you wish. And there's a difference between those also in theory and application. What do those actually stand for? And from that we have lines of study that trickle all the way down to community college level. This channel is really aimed at people who are interested in college, maybe they're post-college, and they want to study on their own. It's not just about being able to research and find information. Although we do have to cover that, but we also have to cover, let me move the camera so the foot's not in the way. All right. So we want to be able to research efficiently and effectively. We want to be able to get information, know that it is correct, and be able to organize that information. Sometimes I help students who have giant stacks of information similar to the notebooks that you'll see behind me that are stacked with information that I have to get to. Many of them date from when I was in college. And I would go to classes and jot notes down, and my notes typically looked like, find this article, look at this, let's check this out. Because when a teacher put a large amount of information on the whiteboards, I would typically take my camera and take a photograph of it. And then if the teacher was to say, well, I never said that, really. It only ever happened once, but it did happen. And then once I got home, I would play around in Photoshop or Illustrator and then make those notes be more sensible and recorded them that way. I have a brief video on Thursday on VARK. It's probably going to be the last of the Let's Play while I talk about this. We're going to kind of change the channel. I'm playing with different formats to be able to convey the information. I want to continue with research as the content videos on the Tuesdays. And I really like the Photoshop format more than this personal talking. That's not out of shyness on my part. I have many flaws. Shyness is not really one of them. But the issue is that when we're looking at something like Photoshop or Illustrator or Animate, what used to be Flash in the Adobe Suite, it's like a whiteboard that I can put notes on, and I think that is a little more useful to people who like to see those notes or want to jot them down. The Thursday I want to keep on educational games, but I've been getting questions on whether what is this game, how do we play it, how can I do it well, those sorts of things. And there's some really good players at it. I just play it because I'm interested. I like to, I like the puzzles that keep my mind strong, I guess we could say. And I like to give myself additional challenges. So the games are important for learning, in my opinion. So we're going to have 45-minute segments, more or less, on those continuing forward, but I think we're going to be more focused on the games, and we're going to save the book reviews and the talking for the Tuesdays. That's based basically on feedback that I've been getting at the college. If you're not in college, or you're in high school, or you're in a postdoctoral program, you can still find benefit in this if you're interested in looking at research and being able to separate opinion and fact. With the advent of deepfake technology and affordable movie editing, we're seeing many more misattributions, where somebody is saying someone said something and either they did say that, but it was said and taken out of context. We've seen that in some political ads recently. Or if you have that, it's just completely fake and people just don't know the difference. But as a researcher, we have to know the difference. And so I want to spend some time on that in the channel. I also want to spend some time with how to organize. Because one of the reasons people will collect all this massive amount of information and then they're not sure what to do with it. How do they get it into a paper form? How do they know what to use? And so that's part of what I want to investigate and discuss with people things that I have found that have worked and things that the academic literature has said. And you're going to frequently hear on this channel about academic literature, scientific studies. There's actually a video planned a little later out that will talk about what is a good scientific study, how to evaluate a scientific study, how to read them. And this also counts to textbooks. Most textbooks, most scientific studies are not designed to be read from page 1, line 1 to the end. And that's why sometimes in a dissertation or a good scientific study, information will repeat. And the reason that information repeats is that the person is expected to more likely go to one area, find out if that is the article that they want, and then go back up. I tell students who are in their freshman year, look at the abstracts of the scientific studies. Look at the overview chapter, it's usually the preface of a textbook. You don't have to read textbooks from start to finish. And so I have a video plan to do that. I do have a doctorate in education, and I am very focused into the research angle of how to prepare ourselves as researchers. I think that anyone can benefit from being able to identify evidence, what evidence is effective, what is not. Don't bring me anecdotal evidence and expect, well, I know somebody who said. Because as a person, I might care and be, oh, really, that's very interesting. But as a researcher, if you tell me, well, I don't think homework works because I know someone who did, or I didn't find it useful, I'll be like, that's very interesting. Why should I listen to you? What makes you credible in the field? Where are your credentials? Did you have publications on this? Do you give talks? Are you a consultant? What makes you a credible source? Sometimes these conversations don't go that well, and I can live with that. One of the things that the cat is now switched from clawing me to tickling me. It's not really an improvement for making the video. Sometimes I'm playing the game and he sits on my lap and you'll see like the mouse go wild or something because he wants to play with mice. I understand cats chase mice. So this particular cat eats mice, both the digital and the living one. So when we're looking at this channel, you can certainly let me know what sort of information you're interested in. While I am focused on research, definitely we will be looking at other educational topics. I have some books that I think are absolutely marvelous in the educational field, and they really deserve more attention on them for what they help bring people to do in the educational field. But at the same time, I don't want to get too far afield in educational policy, for instance. We'll let someone else do a channel on educational policy. But I do want to look at the building blocks of education that really dictated this is how we're going to present information. This is how we're going to present evidence. This is how we're going to receive evidence. And there are some really good channels out there. I know that I've linked several times to Answers with Joe, which is a YouTube that presents kind of all sorts of bizarre scientific topics. And they're topics that I find are researched very well. I've gone many times to and said, you know, I'm interested in quasars, or I'm interested in black body experimentation, or I'm interested in graviton particles. I thought they didn't exist, and we haven't proven that they are. They're just a theory. But when I go and find his sources and go check on it, it always works out. So I haven't really been misled on that channel, and I like that. I'll link to occasionally Dr. Mike, which is a medical practitioner that is really looking at combating myths out there about medicine. We could use more channels that have people disregard common myths. There's myths in education, which we're going to talk about too. I gave it's called a teacher development. I was trying to think of a different way to do it, but it's called a teacher development. And what they do is the teachers come in and I talk to them about intelligence, because as instructors, many times we're guilty of not being precise in our language. And we say that sometimes students are not intelligent. We really should not do that because we don't have a good measurement of intelligence. It's our theory of learning that we are currently under, the paradigm that we're currently under, is a tiered system. How do we acquire information? How do we process that information? And then how do we retain the information? And when we pass it between the processing and the retention of the information, that's where application comes. So many times students are quite intelligent, but they have trouble acquiring that information, either from inefficiencies or that they learned under a previous paradigm. I'm old enough, sadly, to remember a previous paradigm where intelligence tests were given frequently. The problem is that intelligence tests measure how you did on manipulating information for that particular intelligence. Okay. And I'll do a video later on intelligence, but being able to rotate a shape in space might mean that you have good spatial intelligence, maybe. But it's not a measurement of how good you are at it. So there's a lot of misinformation about the learning process, and that directly affects research. Because people will say, well, how do you know about this? Or I learned it differently. Yes, most likely, right? If you were in school more than 20 years ago, you had an entirely different paradigm. That won't necessarily affect the students that are coming into college now. But it also depends on the area that they were, their upbringing, their culture, their gender. These are all things that can affect how we learn. And so I really wanted to have this channel be able to describe that. As always, if you leave comments below, I will try without dying. My cat wants to escape, but can you just look at the camera there? He's like, no, I'm not going to look at the camera. Please? No. Okay. I'll stop torturing the cat there. Although he is just sitting down on my feet. So it's not like he ran really very far. And I think he's going to be jumping back up pretty soon. Probably as soon as the camera goes, as he wanders off. As always, if you have a particular format that you find works for you, please share that below. If you have topics, please put it down in the comments. If it's something that you find to be useful, the videos or the channel, or you'd like to hear more about, feel free to give me a thumbs up. And hopefully you'll see me next week. And I'll have a video posted on reductionism, which is a current ontological perspective that is somewhere on the scale between realism and anti-realism. Thank you. Take care.